Okay. So we thought at the beginning, this is Marcia Brown of FOS, and Christina Lash and I are going to be giving the presentation. And we thought at the beginning we would just make sure that everybody's comfortable with GoToMeeting. So it looks like everybody who's on here has managed to connect their screen and also their audio. But if there's anybody who's still struggling with audio, on your GoToMeeting panel, you choose one or the other of either the computer audio or the phone call. So hit click to the next one, Caroline. If you want, you can turn on your webcam so that we can see you, and that's where you turn it on, share my webcam. So keep going, Caroline. In the chat box, you can send a message to the whole group or to a specific participant. And actually, we're going to put the link to this presentation in the chat box because we've got some things that we want you all to participate in. So keep going, Caroline. You can mute or unmute yourself. I think from looking at the calendar invitation this morning, we're probably going to have about 40 of us or so. So it's probably going to be best for people to be muted most of the time. And then if you want to say something, you can just unmute yourself. One more click, Caroline. And if you want to hide the, the GoToMeeting panel, that's that orange box with the white arrow. So this is just a quick introduction to GoToMeeting. And I'm going to put the link to these slides in the chat box so that you guys have access to these slides. Okay, Christina, take it away, ground rules.
Great, thanks, Marcia. So I'm Christina Lash, and I work for the Nature Conservancy doing conservation planning and adaptation work, and I also help coordinate CCNet's operations together with John Morrison, who from WWF, who is our overall CCNet global coordinator, and Marcia and Olivia, also on this call, serve on our small coordination team. So this is offered to you in a collaboration between CCNet and CMP members. Caroline is also on this call, and we hope to be doing more of these trainings. So just as we would do in our overall coaching meetings, we usually have ground rules, right? So this practice is also very useful in a virtual setting. And ideally, when you are coaching a team, you would obviously build this together with the team. You wouldn't just come and bring something that's already cooked. But for time's sake here, we thought we would share some of the proven and really core things that are recommended in virtual meetings. So start with everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has valuable experiences and something that they can contribute. In the old days, we used to call it a boss-free zone. So no one's word or ideas are more important than others. That's part of that. Share the air. So let's try to be concise, especially in virtual meetings. Everything takes longer. So if we can be concise, that helps so everyone can participate. The next one is participate. Marcia already explained, we can use the chat box to share ideas, to ask questions. In some programs, there's a little hand that you can raise and say, hey, I'd like to speak. So you can use that, or you can just use your real hand and say, hey, I have, when we're voting or something. Another good idea is to follow an organized system. So let's say if we were sharing ideas, Marcia could ask us to speak up in the way that she sees the list of people who are connected, and that helps to give everyone the word. Be present. We know that during the current times, it's difficult. The children are at home, they're asking questions, someone needs food, maybe the dogs are barking. There's lots of interruptions, but if we all try to find a quiet place and really try to be here, it does make a difference. Engage in productive conversations, just as in real life, always think that everyone has the best intentions and we all want each other to succeed. So be curious and really listen for understanding and have an open mind and defer judgment. And tough love, which is one of our core values as conservation coaches. So be hard on the ideas, practice constructive criticism, but be compassionate. We need to be hard on the ideas and easy on the people. Care for yourself and others and your community. So as facilitators, we know that before a meeting starts, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to get our water, our coffee, use the restroom, etc. So the same rules apply here. And especially if you're caring for others during this time, make sure that their needs are met so that you can focus on what you need to do in your virtual meeting. Honor confidentiality means that if something was shared, that even if someone didn't say this is sensitive, use your own judgment. And if you think that could be sensitive, then keep the lesson, but don't share unnecessary details that people don't need to know. Marsha already shared using the mute button. Be ready and focused. So test the technology, or what Marsha did, she gave us a quick drive-through through the technology so we can be ready. And if we agree on any follow-up steps, to try to keep those realistic. And then ultimately, let's make the best of our time together. Time is valued. And so take a deep breath. You're not alone. We're all facing challenges and we're here to help each other. So ask away on the chat. We don't have all the answers, the presenters, but together with you, I'm sure we could answer most, if not all, questions. And if something isn't working, rather than complaining quietly in a corner with someone else, let us know. Let Felix, Caroline, Marsha, and I know if you can't hear us or if there's a problem. So these would be our proposed ground rules. And can we all live with that? Can you show me a hand for this call? All right, thanks. Next slide, please. So what we want to achieve today with all of you is learn together about what is virtual coaching and what do virtual venues look like? How can we prepare for successful virtual coaching sessions? And what are some of the common issues or slippery slopes for a virtual coach, and how can we deal with those? And then any additional resources that we find very useful, and I'm sure you have plenty of others, so we look forward to hearing from you also. And just as an announcement, this is the first of a series of webinars, and we would really love to hear from you. We have a poll at the end to get suggestions on what other topics you would like to learn more about. And hopefully you can share some, so we will bring you in as session hosts also. And this is our agenda for today. So we will spend 15 minutes on the introduction, which is where we are right now. Then we will spend a little bit of time covering what is virtual coaching, what does a meeting space look like for virtual venues, what we need to do before virtual session, and then we'll cover some of the challenges and solutions, and then we just have some brief closing remarks. So we have an icebreaker for you. And what we want to do is we want to get you to test technology also. So we're all learning in this, so don't get too frustrated if it doesn't work right away. Remember, Felix and Caroline are here to help if you get stuck. So please click on the poll link.
I put it in the chat box, Christina.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. All righty. So let's go to the chat box and let's try to do, 2 or 3 minutes. This is a quick exercise. Can you find the poll?
It looks like people are finding it. You're seeing the responses showing up.
I was going to try the texting, and the number is gone. Could you put the text number back up?
Sorry. Yeah, actually,
Oh,
could somebody grab that from the Google Slides and put it in the chat box?
I'll grab it.
I think I'll deactivate
I'll grab it from the
poll
Google.
if I move.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I imagine the texting probably just works if you're in the United States.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
That was one question I had.
I'm definitely not the person to know that.
Right. We're not the experts yet, even though we're giving this presentation.
I know a lot about computers and very little about cell phones.
I just got the smiley faces, but not the texting question.
So it looks like we've got a bunch of responses. Are people managing to get to the link or to the cell phone? Is anybody still answering? Or should we go on to the next question?
I tried the text approach, and it didn't work. I got a message saying that my phone number is not subscribed to receive text messages from Marlboro.
Oh,
so
okay.
Let's test
Sorry about that.
Time. Yep.
Okay.
Well,
maybe we can test that this afternoon before or after this call.
Okay.
Okay, shall we go on to the next question, Caroline?
Yeah, so let's just, how do we interpret the data here? We have some orange, not many, then some yellow.
One, a few yellows, 6 yellows. Most people are in the light green, and a bunch of people in the dark green. So overall, I think we're doing pretty well.
So healthy viability.
Marcia and Christina, are you going to give a little bit of background on why the different types of polls we're doing and why we're sharing them? Or do you want?
Not in this call because this is just an introduction, but Marcia, I don't know if you want to very quickly cover it.
Why don't we go to the next poll and people can fill it out, and as they're filling it out, we can just explain a little bit about sort of why we're, and actually I was going to talk about it a little bit later. So let's just wait until the section where I talk about it later.
My slide to advance. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
So you guys can all, if you stay in your browser where you were, your question should just change. You shouldn't need to do anything new to get this new question. And then just make sure if you, because we're saying in a few words, just use hyphens in between your words.
So for not English speakers, hyphens is the little line in the middle, right?
Yeah, this right here. Yep.
Yeah.
We consider dash. Is dash better or hyphen better?
Either way. But let's not spend too much time on this because we have a lot of stuff to cover. So 1-2 words.
Happy to see familiar faces. Caffeinated. Mildly anxious. Very isolated, as we have been in lockdown for over 4 weeks. So that's the idea here, is to get you guys together. Happy. Good. So Caroline, when they come out larger, does that mean several people have said that?
We had this, I'm not sure.
Yes,
that's something we should test. But well, it does.
Yeah.
I thought we tested this with FOS and we did not see that happening, but we should make sure. In general, yes. With the word cloud, it should, but
Okay.
Yeah, something to test. Shall I go on to the next?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I think we should keep moving.
Just a comment, as we are talking about tools, looks like this tool, it's better if we use only one word, and then we allow them to put several times, because it really helps them for the two to merge things together, because this way, for example, I put anxious and overloaded, so it appears twice, and only one together. And if someone else also put overload, it didn't match because it was together with anxious.
Right, right. So it's probably better to just use one word. So just to get an idea of where people are calling in from, our next question for you is, where are you calling in from, so that we can get a map of who's on the call. And I think I counted in the attendees, we've got 48 folks now. Oh, it looks like a few people have had issues texting here. But anyway, yeah, I think you guys are probably getting the idea of these are just some fun ways to keep people, to you know, break the ice at the beginning of a meeting, or for some of these, you can also use polls to keep people engaged. So have we got most people? I don't see that many people on the map, but anyway, we should probably
yeah,
move
let's keep
on.
going.
Okay. So the
Great.
next thing, because we've got lots planned for you, the next thing, oh, actually, sorry, Christina, you're introducing this. Take it away.
Yeah. So the next is still another icebreaker, but using different technology, so you can get a sense of it. So I'd like you each to think about one person in your life. It can be someone who's still with you or someone who has passed on, who taught you something valuable that you use when you are a conservation coach. So, you know, spend a little time thinking. And then we will, in the chat box again, look for the link. We will bring you right into the slide deck that Marcia and I are using. And so we would like you to pick one of the sticky notes and write in it, who are you grateful for and what did they teach you? And send them a thought of gratitude as you do that.
So I see 22 of you who are in the PowerPoint. So, okay, 25, looks like more people are coming in. So go to the chat box if you're not in there yet and click on the link. Go to slides 11, 12, or 13. There are 3 different slides there because we knew that there were going to be a bunch of people. So there may not be space on the first slide for everyone. I think there are just 25 cards on the first one. So pick a card, any card on any one of those 3 slides.
I wonder if I need to, are you seeing cards being filled out, Marcia, and they're not showing on my screen yet?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I think that I
am,
need to maybe escape. And
yeah, I think you need to probably stop presenting and then start presenting again.
Yep.
Okay, so do you see this is another way that you could actually use if you're coaching to ask people to fill in post-it notes in a presentation.
Could I make one comment about this exercise too? One thing
Sure.
that's, it could be a good thing or a not so good thing, but right now everybody's able, or most people are in here anonymously, and which can be great if people want to, share things but are either shy or maybe it's sensitive, something they want to share. But if you, but we're a bit hesitant to. But if you did want people to say who they are, then maybe you would ask them to put their name in front, or have them sign into the presentation so you could trace that.
Thanks, Caroline. All righty, I think this is great. And I hope you sent a thought of gratitude to whoever you mentioned here. Gratitude is the best attitude, they say. So let's move on then to the next slide, please. Great, so I'll do this more quickly because we have a lot to cover. So what is virtual coaching? I mean, it's really the same type of coaching we do with projects, but you're not physically in the same space. So you need to do things in different ways. And how is it different to coach a team virtually? Well, we need to use technology like we're doing here. We need to be more patient. Things take a lot longer. It does take a lot of preparation also. So there's several differences, and we will cover some of the challenges in the next slides later on. Some of the benefits, well, obviously our carbon footprint is lower if we're not traveling all over the world. And there's another benefit that one coach can be assisting multiple teams in shorter time. And sometimes arranging, scheduling meetings with teams can be easier to do. It can bring teams together that otherwise maybe wouldn't meet. You know, you can have peer reviews with one team in Africa and one team in Brazil and one team in Argentina, and who otherwise, you know, couldn't be helping each other. So let's look at the bright side of the challenges we're facing and get creative and push our boundaries. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
To you, Marsha.
No, previous slide, that one. Okay, so where are you going to meet? I think we all have seen, particularly over the last few weeks, that there are a bunch of these different platforms. Lots of people are using Zoom. We're today using GoToMeeting. My kids are using Google Meet, which used to be called Google Hangouts. Some people use Adobe Connect. So what are the differences between these different platforms? So for those of you who are in the presentation, you can click on that link. And actually, Caroline, if you can click on that link and take us to the table. So we put together a table comparing these different platforms. There's one that we don't know very well, so we didn't fill out all the information on that one. And, you know, we don't know these platforms perfectly, but essentially what we wanted to show are some of the differences between them. So they all allow screen sharing, but some of them have some additional functionality, like Zoom will allow you to have breakout groups, you can use whiteboards, you can record the meetings. GoToMeeting also allows that. We're doing that now. Adobe Connect also has some additional functionality. There are different screen views that you can set up ahead of time. You can set up sort of rooms where you, just the same way that you would if you were working in person, you have all of your materials, your whiteboard, your presentations, and you can, at the end of the virtual day, you can leave that, and then the next day you can come back to it. And so there are differences between these. A bunch of them are fairly similar. I would say Adobe Connect we included here because it's pretty different. We're not trying to promote any one or another one, but just Adobe Connect is definitely more expensive. It allows more functionality. It's a little bit more of sort of the Mercedes-Benz. I think for a lot of us, we probably may not need to be spending quite that much. One thing that we've found in FOS is that it can be really helpful to use a system that adapts to low bandwidth situations. And it seems like Zoom and Google Meet seem to be a little bit stronger in that department. Most of these are pretty easy to learn. Adobe Connect takes a little bit more time to learn. Security concerns, there are security concerns with Zoom that have come up in the news. I haven't heard about them with any of the others. But anyway, so this is a resource for you guys. Let's keep going. But we just wanted to provide that information.
Sorry, Marcia. Can everyone please
yeah.
go on mute? There is a little bit of,
Yeah,
there's like a side conversation going on. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, a little background noise. Okay, so what do you need to do before the meeting? So you guys know, you're all coaches, you have facilitated processes, you know that most of the work happens before your meeting. And when you're working virtually, that's even more the case. You really need to prepare. So you've got to develop an agenda and, of course, detailed agenda. And we in FOS have found recently that it's really helpful to put that agenda onto either a Google site, which is what this picture is of, where you can put in pretty pictures that show where you are. This is from Colombia. You can tell by the colorful buses. Or it could be in just Google Docs. But the point is, what you really want is to allow people access to this information and allow them access to all of the resources. So Caroline, if you click, you'll see where it says flip chart, and keep clicking. There's a link to resources. I couldn't use the actual resources from this real workshop because it was happened for USAID and the information is confidential, but this is another similar example. So let's say you're working on defining your scope and conservation targets, which AID calls focal interest. You could link to a whiteboard space where you've got 4 different groups. Each of the groups was given a color and they brainstormed what those conservation targets should be. And so then you've brought all 4 of your groups back together and you're comparing the conservation targets and having a discussion, in plenary. So the point being, you give people access to the agenda and all of the resources that are associated with each one of these sessions. So on to the next. So as I was saying, most of the work to have a successful meeting, particularly when you're working virtually, needs to happen before you get together. So before you get together, you need to think about how are you going to enable participants to share, to add content and to participate. If you're working in a small group, it may be enough to just share your screen and be using Marathi and be putting information into Marathi as people are talking and you're working together, and that may be enough. But in a lot of cases, people like to be able to build things themselves. So there are a bunch of whiteboard programs out there. We've been playing around with both Mural as well as Jamboard. So at the risk of totally distracting you guys during a virtual session, I've given you a link to a Mural that you can play with, preferably after this presentation. And there's also on the previous slide a link to a Jamboard where you can play around and see what you can do on whiteboards. So if you're going to be using these, you need to set them up before your meeting, which is why this is included in the what do you need to do before your meeting. So if let's say you use a whiteboard program to have people build a results chain like the one that is shown here and sort of the top part of the slide, then what you could do as the coach is you could put that information into Marathi, and then you can give it back to people and say, well, what do you think about this? And then they could write all over it, like we've done with the image that I have down here in sort of the bottom right, where people have said, yeah, this is incredible, this is great, we really like this result, no, change that. So these are just whiteboards where we've just been playing around. But my point is you can make things really interactive. So other things that you need to think about before your meeting: how are you going to keep people engaged? So do you want to put people into breakout groups? is it going to, we all have found that people will engage more if they're in small groups. You'll get the quieter people speaking more. So click again, Caroline. Do you want to?
Sorry,
Sorry, one more time.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry.
Do you want to use polls? So we've been trying to actually have you guys learn by doing today. Polls are a fun way to keep people engaged and to get their feedback. You can ask them a quick question about, did they find the previous session helpful or not helpful, and you can project the results. You can do these word clouds. There are several different ways to project the information, and we've been using Poll Everywhere, which if you use Google Chrome, you can add an add-on into your Google Chrome that allows you to actually set things up. This is what we did yesterday in preparation for this presentation. You set things up so that when you get to a specific slide, it automatically sends that specific question to all of the people who have clicked on the Poll Everywhere link, and then their responses automatically get added into your slide. So you're projecting people's responses as they are responding. So great way to keep people engaged. Also, virtual energizers can be helpful to keep people engaged. Session Lab has a bunch of energizers, and I'm sure there are lots of them out there these days. That's just one site. So Caroline, we can keep going. So a few other things to think about before your meeting. You want to try to avoid problems with technology. So you want to give people some instructions ahead of time on how to connect. Sorry, we had actually intended to send out more than just the link to you guys ahead of time. But, so you could provide actually a little short written instructions on how do you use Zoom or how do you use GoToMeeting. It's also helpful to spend a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting, as we did, just to say to people, here's where the chat box is, here's where, if you want to turn on your camera, you can do that. Get everybody comfortable using the platform. And then if you're using some interactive tools, let them play around with the interactive tools and get comfortable with those before you really get into the meat of your workshop. So over to you, Christina.
Thanks, Marcia. So now going over into some of the common challenges, and of course there's a lot more. So in the resources that we're sharing with you, we have a table that summarizes some of these challenges and solutions that coaches have encountered in the past years. So here we will just cover a few, and then we'd like to tap into all of you to share some more. So how long can we stay focused and online? And there is no magic bullet, but we have collectively found that 60 minutes to maximum 90 minutes is about what works. And it is ideal to set up some break time. So, allow people to get up and get something to drink, use the restroom, etc. So don't plan for like 4-hour-long virtual meetings. That's just a killer. Then going to the next one, if let's say now Marcia and I we're facilitating, we're presenting, but if we also had to be looking at the chat box or fixing technical issues, it can easily get overwhelming. So just think as pilots on a plane. They always have a co-pilot, so we can do the same. I mean, we don't have to do everything alone. So look for a buddy, at least 1 or 2 people, and work with them early on when you're setting up your session. Ask for support to build your agenda, to think about what energizers, icebreakers you can do, and discuss, what are the roles, who's going to take notes, who can watch the chat, who can facilitate, etc. The next one is it's harder to keep people engaged, especially if we don't have the camera on us. it's easy to get distracted and check email and do other things, and or to do daydreaming. So, I mean, you could discuss with your group, is it all right to, if someone just feels like they have to daydream, you know, will we be all right with that? And there's things like Marcia was saying, we can do energizers. So in the resources we're sharing with you, we are sharing some links to some of these examples. And if you have great stuff to share, together we can build a much stronger resource base. There's, you know, also, as we said before, having a line of queuing people up to share things. If you're well organized, that keeps people more engaged. And now we'd like to hear from all of you. So why don't we use the chat box and tell us, like, what's one of the challenges that you face or you have faced that has been frustrating when you've done virtual meetings? Type it in the chat box, just the problem. And Felix is going to help us to read out one of these challenges. And then together, we will share some of the solutions that we have applied. And we will have about 10 minutes to share some challenges and solutions. So Felix has what did the dog bring in today?
Javi says, low bandwidth with certain countries, no video, faulty audio.
Okay, so how are people working around those issues? Feel free to unmute yourself or also type in the chat box.
This is Erica. I think just trying to make sure that people figure out their audio and visual well in advance, that they work with whatever tech people that they need, and just really emphasize how important it is that they have a good connection. But it's still like, it's so variable. It's the biggest challenge that I'm facing right now.
For a training, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Javi here. Just for a training, what we did was record the whole session, but this doesn't work for a workshop, right? So this is not a good solution for an interactive session. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that we're probably all on a learning curve in terms of what technologies will work under what circumstances. And, you know, maybe you just, in certain circumstances, you need to use Skype, or you need to try WhatsApp, and, you know, or email things to people, or, you know.
Yeah, some basic thing that I have been doing is to ask everybody to really close everything else that is happening in their computer. And sometimes people are even joining with their mobiles because sometimes the connection are better. And also one thing that Zoom can do is to call people in, just as we used to do in the past, to have conference calls. So if I really want to make sure that I'm going to have someone that is going to present, I will start to get their phone just in case, like it's a C plan. It's just a recommendation.
Yes, may I say something?
Sure. Yes.
This is Jorge from Spain. I think it doesn't matter the platform or tool that you are using. I think the only thing that you can do is as Cristina have said before, or Marcia, I didn't remember, is preparation, and imagination.
Yep.
Yeah, good point. So Felix, do you want to read us another of the comments of the questions?
Sure. So actually, one that has been mentioned by a few people in different ways is the lack of non-verbal language, not being able to see people's body language or read people's body language, and get that personal connection that you would otherwise, if you were in the same room, that you could attend to, but you can't in a virtual setting.
Thank you. So how have people addressed this problem? Or how have you worked around it?
This is Erica again. I think, like you guys emphasize, people turning on their video and using that. Of course, when the internet connection is not good, that's a struggle, but really emphasizing that that's part of how we're going to bridge this virtual divide, and feel like a team and feel like we're working together is to be able to see each other. And then building in some games so that becomes less awkward to be sitting there watching each other's screen, but making it more fun.
Thank you. Felix, should we go to another challenge?
Sure. One is saying, well, people dominating some people dominating the discussions, while the more quiet ones, well, remain quiet, and it's more difficult to sort of like intervene and you know, pick up the more quiet ones and slow down or mute the more active people on a call.
Could I jump in with an idea here?
Sure.
This is Caroline from FOS. And I think some of the tools we're sharing here, I think, are great for addressing that, because you know, we're asking you all to fill out sticky notes or respond to a survey or something like that. And so everyone has an equal chance to get their thoughts down without being dominated by one person. And even within, if you're getting a you know, one dominant person saying something, you could construct a poll on the fly too and make it anonymous and try to get a sense of whether the group has that feeling too or not. I mean, of course, carefully worded, but you know, to kind of take the pulse of the group.
Yeah, and also allow, oh, go ahead, Felix.
Sorry, just to add to Caroline's point here, that some of the call-in platforms also allow for breakout rooms, and you can sometimes even pre-assign people to breakout rooms. So if you do your preparation well, and you should, you know, you would already anticipate who are the more dominant ones and who are maybe the more quiet ones, and therefore assign people to the correct rooms so that everyone can speak up and provide input, you know, to the best of their abilities and in a safe environment.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I mean, just as we would do in person meetings, there are techniques of, if someone is very quiet, you can encourage them to participate and say, can you step up so we can hear your ideas? But also if someone is dominating a lot, we can privately ask them to step back and allow for that space. You know, in our ground rules, we had to share the space and be concise. So we can go back to the ground rules, and it's better, as I don't know if this is a saying worldwide, but we say if you have to reprimand or give feedback to someone, do it in private. And if you're going to praise them, do it in public. So I would say the same applies here. So you can just chat to them in private and say, hey, you're dominating a little.
I think, may I say something?
Sure.
In our case, what we found is that it's very important to have at least 3 people or maybe 4 to control the session, the virtual session. I think you need more people than a physical meeting. So we are trying to do different teams, and we are testing the hidden, the spies. It's people like that has certain instructions and are not presented as conductors of the meeting.
Great point.
Yeah,
so
Jorge,
just
I think
as
that's
we
a
said,
really good point.
Yeah, like have your co-pilot and your crew.
Yeah, we're doing that today. And, you know, I was having computer problems, of course, in the last like 2 minutes right before this session. So then Caroline took over and projected the presentation. And, you know, we have a whole team putting on this presentation. And I think that's an excellent point.
Great. And so let's maybe do one more challenge, and then we'll move on to our closing part. Felix, do you want to read us one more?
Maybe circling back to the tech issue that some of the organizers don't really take the time to really learn the platform or learn the tools that they will use in their calls, and therefore it creates problems. And maybe combining that with another comment that if people call in using a phone, some of the techniques or some of the exercises don't work well if you sign in from a phone compared to when you sign in from a computer.
So any suggestions on how we can overcome that? I mean, preparation again, and what else?
You just sending the expectations in advance that people should prepare themselves to have a computer, to log in through the computer, and that they would be lacking on certain features. They would not be able to participate the same way if they don't.
Right. All right. Well, I know we could keep going here with this great clinic of how to face challenges. And we do have the spreadsheet that we will share with you all. So please have a look. And I'm sure you have stuff to share there. So, don't be bashful and help us complete that. So keep adding to it. And Marcia is going to take us to the closing.
So I'm sure that all of you have experienced the same things that we who are organizing this session have experienced, which is that in your email inbox you have all these resources that people are circulating, and it's a lot of good information, but it's a little overwhelming. So we wanted to share some resources with you, but we have tried to make this a really short list of resources of what we have found to be some of the most useful resources. So Mural, which is a whiteboard software, has their definitive guide on facilitating remote workshops, and there are a couple more there. And then we've put together a Christina, that's sort of a spreadsheet of possible solutions to common challenges in virtual coaching. That's what you were just referring to. Okay. So, and those of you, there are a few of you in the chat box who have asked, well, where's the link to this? Where's the link to that? Everything is in this Google slide presentation, which we've provided the link to the Google slide presentation, which you guys can bookmark, and so you can come back to all these resources. So next slide. So to close out, as Christina mentioned earlier, this is intended to be the first in a series of virtual sessions, and we're really interested in hearing from you all about what are the topics of most interest to you. So if we're hoping that you still have that link open on a tab on your computer. If not, Felix has just put it into the chat box, and you can go back there. So please tell us of the topics that we included, what is of most interest. So virtual icebreakers, how to use interactive tools like whiteboards, how to plan for and run. Now that's getting less interest, more interest. See how fun this is? You get to, as people are answering live, you get to see how things change. Okay, there's lots of interest in the how to use interactive tools like whiteboards and polls and Google tools.
Marsha, I have a comment.
Yeah.
I have already been running some virtual meetings, and what I'm finding challenging is how to use these tools for our specific needs. For example, which one is the best one for us to run a results chain, for example, because we need some more things than just a normal meeting. And right. Among us, we have the same requirements. So I think if we are able to make this next level of coaching for the open standards, for the kind of sessions that we need to go through, I think will be amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we wouldn't make it, as broadly as just how do you use whiteboards, but how can you use a whiteboard to develop a results chain or to develop a situation model, and what are people's experiences? Okay, so shall we go on to the next one? So if there are topics of interest to you that you would like to present on, so if you have virtual coaching experience that you'd like to share, please grab a sticky note, provide your name, your email, and the skills that you could share. So this is back in the Google Slides.
Can we please add the link again in the chat box so people don't have to scroll up all the way to the chat?
I can do that.
Maybe just a tip for anybody who's in there. When you're in any Google Doc or slide, spreadsheet, etc., this is something I only learned within the last 6 to 12 months or so. You can click on somebody's icon up here, and it will take you directly to where they are. So if you were up in on a different slide and you wanted to get down here, just click on somebody's icon, and assuming they're down here, you go there.
More helpful when they're not anonymous sheep and anonymous coyote, when you actually can see their names.
Yes. Yes,
but
yes, I would recommend
great
Marsha or Felix or, but yeah,
right.
Probably not anonymous pumpkin.
Right. Yeah, we've got an anonymous gopher and an anonymous anteater filling this out.
No pangolin?
Hamster.
I have seen it here before.
Great, I love it. We're getting a lot of helpers.
Yeah. Fabulous. It's nice to see some familiar names and see some familiar faces for those of you who are sharing your screen.
And maybe as people are filling this out, one thing we haven't asked is how long these trainings should be. We thought for an introduction, an hour was good. And as we said, we shared that maximum 90 minutes is what's recommended. But would people be willing to spend 90 minutes on something that requires more advanced or, more time for practice, like what you were saying, Anita, to use whiteboards and those things?
Yeah, I think we would probably need more time. I'm judging by the 2-hour meeting that Caroline and I had on Poll Everywhere yesterday afternoon. It probably would be better to have a little bit more time.
Okay. We have a few more minutes.
Okay, looks like people are wrapping up here. If our closing slide is really just to say thank you to all of you for participating, and give us a virtual high five. If anybody has any final questions or final comments, we have about 4 more minutes, and then I know Caroline has to jump to another call, and probably several people do.
I think Oscar wants to say something. Or was he saying goodbye?
It'd be nice to see you, Oscar. Looks like you're trying to turn on your camera. There we go. Now we can see you. Hi,
I just realized that I just realized that my camera was off. So I think one suggestion when we start these virtual meetings is to make sure that everybody to make a check that everybody is using their camera, that everybody can speak up, and everybody can mute themselves. So I think a quick technical checkup would be good before we start a meeting.
Let's take a group photo. That's the way to ask them to open the
there
camera.
We go.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
way.
so everybody turn on your cameras.
Could I just make one, just so people are aware, when people do put on their cameras, it can slow things way down. So maybe, let them know that, and they can make the decision of whether or not to. I know I personally, I can't have all the cameras on or my computer freezes up.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take a picture with the tour here. There we go. One more. Okay. Excellent. Guys?
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.